So thank you for joining. Glad we didn't scare you away from last week's session. So I'm going to share my slides and then we're going to take things forward. But actually what we'll do is first we'll do this. What I'm going to ask you to do, all of you, and we'll do this because it helps us to really consolidate some of the things we've been discussing. I'd like you all to share in the chat window and send to everyone just one thing that you particularly took away from last week's session. Okay, it's like a refresher just to stimulate the mind. When we do this, it creates more sensitive links in the mind between what we studied and what we're going to be exploring today, which reinforces the learning and therefore reinforces the chances that we will take things forward and continue to act on this. So everyone share in the chat window one thing that you took away from last week's session. And I do appreciate we may have one or two people who were not here last week. That's fine. For those who were, just share something that you took away from last week's session, please. Okay, I'll just give you a heads up while you're doing that, that we are going to have a lot of things for you to discuss today. So please have something to write with, some pen and paper or whatever you will use. Okay, systems theory. Okay, we'll talk definitely about that today. So I don't think we actually discussed it, Shalini, last week, but I mentioned it on the previous presentation. Thank you. Okay, Darshak, thank you. Good to see you, Darshak. We'll be in touch. Okay, let's see. Dylan, okay, absolutely. Thank you, Dylan. Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Parta. Hey, Nandini, thank you for joining. What starts like nectar, yes, can become poison. Yep, so that's directly from the Bhagavad Gita. It can, if it's in the wrong mode, and we'll talk about those modes as well. Okay. Okay, lacing the goals with an incentive. Thank you, Pranasha. Good. So let's be very clear, and thank you, Asper. Love and share, fantastic. Okay, so one of the things we want you to do with this session, and we want to frame this properly, is that consider this session like a menu. We're going to give you a lot of interesting ideas and insights, things that you can plug in and play, things that you can practically apply. Some will resonate more with you. Some may resonate less with you. That's fine, okay? The key thing is that you take from this what is most useful to help you on your journey, okay? And as we said, many of these things are derived from what we call the tradition of Bhakti Yoga, insights from the Bhagavad Gita, and the wider Vedic literatures, which are one of the most powerful sources of wisdom known to humankind, simply because they have a very deep and penetrating understanding of the human condition from many, many different perspectives. In fact, I would go so far as to say, in my, I don't know, 30 years or so of really trying to tune into this knowledge, I would go so far as to say that anything that you see, any system, technique, or process that you see in the world, which actually works, and when I say works, I don't just mean works in the short term, but any approach that you see in the world that works over a long and deep period of time, so works consistently over the long term, anything that you find like that, you will be able to trace it back in some way, shape, or form to the Vedic literatures. Okay, let's get into the presentation. I'm going to share my screen, and then we're going to take things forward. Okay, so let's do this. So we are at part 2 of our presentation, The Future by Design. And there's a lot of very interesting things to explore with you. So as I said, it's like a menu. We're going to get you to do various exercises. We're going to get you to do various reflections, all with the goal of empowered goal setting. Okay, so let's start the journey here. Okay, so one of the most exciting frameworks that are given in the Bhagavad Gita is what we call the gunas. So Krishna, in his conversation with Arjuna, they're the two main characters in the literature called the Bhagavad Gita, he speaks about 3 different categories. He talks about the mode of ignorance, the mode of passion, and the mode of goodness. Okay, I'm just going to give you a quick synopsis of what each means. Then we're going to launch straight into our first exercise. Okay, so let's do this. Before I show you how to do this, I want you to use your emoticons, your reaction signs. How many of you have some familiarity, even if it's a basic familiarity, with the modes of material nature? If you have that, please raise your hand in some way, shape, or form. I just want to see and get a feel for how many people are familiar with this, so I can know whether to give it from base principles or to take it from another level. Okay, we have a few, but many are not so familiar, and that's fine. So I'm going to explain how this works. I'll bring my screen back up and we'll get into it. So in the modern world, and this is how I talked about the linkage, in the modern world, they often have a way of rating something, okay? So for example, some of you will have heard of the RAG rating. So red, amber, and green. So red means that there's something which is, you know, it's a danger, it's an issue, it's something we have to pay attention to. Amber means it's all right, you know, almost ready to go. Green means it's on the move, everything's fine. Now, that idea of a way of rating something, we could say it finds its perfection in this system. And we're going to apply this system to some key areas of your life in order to inform your goals. Last session, we really did a lot on looking at the situation in our past, so 2020, and getting a sense of some of the things that subconsciously we may be interested in, but we may not even be conscious of it. And we explained how in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains that the mind can be the best friend or the worst enemy. And we were talking about how we need to literally make the mind our friend. Part of making someone your friend is to get to know them. It's to get to understand how this actually works. I have my wife, so her teacher, her mentor, had given a class on the mind, and he made an amazing point. He was talking about how the mind is like a horse sometimes. You can consider it like a wild horse. Now, with a wild horse, if you only rein it in, that can work for some time. But sometimes you have to also give it a bit of room, right? If you're always pulling it, it kind of lashes back out, so that you give it some room and you give it some control. So this idea is there. And so we were talking about the idea of getting to know the mind, getting to understand how it works, so we can be better at controlling it. Now, that was one system, that one understanding. Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita also talks about these three modes. He says that everything in the world can be categorized in one of three ways. And I'll just give you a simple breakdown. We'll start with the mode of ignorance. The mode of ignorance, you could say, is characterized by two key things. One is a lack of movement, let's say inertia. Okay, something's not moving. And the second is a lack of knowledge or understanding. So lack of knowledge, lack of activity. We could call that the mode of ignorance. Mode of passion. Great activity, endeavor, desire, but not necessarily so wisely informed. It's just more about I want. And the mode of passion is more around just an intense desire. You could call it a lust for something, right? Then you have the mode of goodness. The mode of goodness is the mode of balance. It is activity based on wisdom, okay? Now, what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to make this framework work for you. We talked last week about where we want to go, and we did some exercises to think about our goals. We're also going to use this framework to give us further penetrating insight. And this is something you can use throughout your whole life. In fact, one of the most exciting things about Vedic knowledge is that they provide some of the world's most potent universal frameworks. Universal means that the model can be applied in so many different areas of life. So I'm going to ask you to write down the following areas of life. So with pen and paper, just make a list of these things, these areas I'm going to share with you. Number one, I'm going to ask you to write down health. Okay. Number two, I'm going to ask you to write down relationships. Number three, I'm going to ask you to write down finances. Number four, I know some of you are students, so for number four, there's two ways you can do it. You can either put career or you can put education, okay? One or the other. So we have number one is health. Number two is relationships. Number three is finances. Number four is either career or education. Number five, I want you to put contribution. Okay. And yeah, actually, well, let's leave it there for now. I'll say one more thing. But for some of you on the call, you may be practicing certain spiritual practices. So we've got 5 so far. But if you are someone who's engaged in a certain kind of spiritual discipline, a spiritual practice, such as mantra meditation and so on, you may want to put a 6th section, which is your spiritual practice. Okay. And for some of you, it may be that you're doing something like mindfulness or meditation, whatever it is. So you should have 6 or 5 areas listed. 1 is health, 2 is relationships, 3 is finances, 4 is career or education, 5 is contribution, and number 6, for those of you who are doing this, is spiritual practice. What I'm going to ask you to do now is the following, and I'm going to run you through an example before you do this yourself. We're going to go step by step, or you're going to go step by step through each of these areas. And you're going to give a rating using the modes of material nature. And I'll explain how this looks. Let's do the first one together. Let's say the first one we're looking at is health. So I'm going to rate my health in terms of one of these 3 areas. So what do I mean by this? Let's say my health is in the mode of ignorance. That could mean I'm eating unhealthy food, don't do any exercise. You know, I haven't checked up on my health for a long time. So my health is in a state of inactivity. There's no regular exercise going on. And at the same time, I'm not really sure how my health is. I sleep erratically. So the overall tendency is around ignorance, okay? So I don't really know how my health is, not doing anything for it. In fact, the mode of ignorance can lead to negative outcomes. And in this example, I'm eating food which is actually bad for me, okay? So that would be health in the mode of ignorance. Health in the mode of passion could be this. So, you know, I go to the gym when I can, but it's more for a social thing, right? I want to look good. I want people to praise me, okay? So I'm taking all kinds of, I'm taking something that artificially bulks my body up, okay? But I'm not really, you know, I don't care what the long-term results are. I just need to look a bit ripped, to look a little bit hench, or, you know, muscular, whatever it is, right? So it's all about the appearances, not really about anything deeper. That's health in the mode of passion. Health in the mode of goodness. I know how my health is. I eat, I have a good diet. I have some regular exercise routine. I'm conscious about what I eat, when I eat. I have good sleep, okay? So I know that I've got a few key elements going on, so activity, and those activities are educated. I know how my health is, I know what I should be doing, and I'm doing it on a regular basis. So wise activity. Passion also, health in passion could be every now and then I go to the gym, right? Every now and then I go on a diet. Every now and then I have a salad, right? So it's a bit erratic. Every now and then, it's not a consistent thing, but just whenever I feel like it, I'll do something, okay? So you're gonna do this in each of these areas. Every one of the 6 areas that we listed, you're gonna think which mode, and I know that sometimes it may be a mix, but I'm gonna ask you to lean towards one overall answer, which area best fits your evaluation of this area. So health, we talked about. Relationships, mode of ignorance. I hang around people who are bad for me. They always push me around. They undermine me. They're negative association. They lie, they cheat, they steal, they're involved in robberies, or whatever it is. But I just go along with it because they're the only people who I know or who I think will accept me. Mode of passion, I hang around with people because I want something, right? I hang around people because I think maybe that person's going to have some money. And if I hang around them, maybe I can get something. So that passion, it's a bit all about me. It's about what I can get from those people. Mode of goodness, I have good relationships with people. We have real friendships. They're there for me in the good times and bad times, and I'm there for them in the good times and bad times. And we know each other, trust each other. So there's a healthy balance of give and take in those relationships. Okay, so that's health, relationships. I'll give you one other example because I think this is brings it to life. Finances. Finances in the mode of ignorance. I have no idea how much money I've got. I have no idea, I have no idea what I spend. I have no idea what comes in. To be honest, I just hope that there's something in the bank when I need to buy something. I'm completely ignorant as to what's going on in finances. Mode of passion, I do everything I can to try and earn a quick, get some saving or earn a quick buck, but I spend sporadically. Mode of passion with finances is it could be also comfort buying. When I'm down, I just go and spend money. When I feel bad, I just go and binge. I binge on, I spend money on different things. So passion with finances is also buy now, pay later. So I just want to enjoy now, and sometime in the future I'll have to pay for it. Okay, so that's financing passion. Finance is in the mode of goodness. I'm conscious of what comes in, what comes out. I have something put away on a regular basis, right? So my finances are able to build up because I'm conscious, right? I know one person I know, they have a direct debit. So it's actually a standing order which takes a certain amount of money. Whenever they get paid, a certain amount goes automatically into another savings account so that they can actually naturally build up over time. And it's not like they have to remember to move some of that money. It's not like they have to remember to save some of that money. Some of it's automatically moving into another account so that they can build up some money over time. I mean, let's be real. Let's just show you the power of this. Think about what happened last year. I saw a news article saying that there are millions of American families who actually, when the coronavirus hit, they literally didn't have enough money to survive for literally the next couple of weeks because they were living literally hand to mouth. Nothing was put away. And then when the unexpected came, wow, they were completely knocked out. So I'm going to get you to do this with the 5 or 6 areas that you've chosen. I'll give you literally a couple of minutes. Take your time to think it through. Each of these 6 areas, give a rating between ignorance or passion or goodness. Again, ignorance, lack of knowledge, lack of activity. Passion, sporadic activity, not so based upon knowledge. Goodness, balanced activity, consistent activity, which is wisely informed. So these 5 or 6 areas, rate, and this is just for you. Don't feel shy. No one has to read this because I want you to be as honest as possible so you can get as much value as possible from your reflection. Okay, I'll give you a couple of minutes and then we will carry on.
Hare Krishna, Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu, someone is just asking for a clarification. They want to know, what is the contribution? Does that mean a contribution to society? Could you just
Yes.
elaborate perhaps?
Yeah, thank you. I should have elaborated. Thank you for bringing that up. So contribution, it literally means service, okay? Some kind of giving. So, for example, there are various studies which have found that the happiest people in the world are those who don't actually live purely for themselves. They maintain themselves, they keep themselves in good shape, but they have some way of giving. Now, for those who are in the Bhakti tradition, this is an essential part of our tradition and practice. So we'll call this service to humanity in terms of giving, for example, spiritual knowledge, giving certain kinds of spiritual benefits, whether it's spiritual food, which has been blessed, whether it's mantra meditation, various things. But for you, if you're not involved in that tradition, if you're still looking into it, you may think of contribution more widely, something where you give to others. It could even be looking after some, members of the community, friends, family, something where you're giving. Some of you may be doing some mentoring for someone else, whatever it is, in some way, in any way, shape or form that you conceive, some way that you are rendering some kind of service to something beyond yourself. Okay, some of you may be involved in community groups, whatever it is. Just think of it in that sense.
Thank you. I think you've definitely clarified that now. So we have one more question.
Sure.
Someone is not clear about how we rate, those 6 areas of our lives.
Sure.
So they just want to clarify whether we rate it either it's like predominantly mode of ignorance, passion, or goodness, or they want to know if there's some type of scale from 0 to 6.
No.
So could you just clarify for them?
So the list was 6 things. So as I said, health, relationships, finance, etc. That was a list of 6 items. And for each item, you give it 1 mode in terms of the rating. Okay, so you may have health in the mode of ignorance. My finances may be in the mode of passion. My relationships may be in the mode of goodness. Okay, so you look at the 6 and each one gets a particular rating. So yes, we recognize that life isn't always fitting into neat boxes, but try to approximate, if you had to put it in one of these areas, which one most categorizes that area. Okay, so that's what I'd like you to do. Okay, and so we are going to move on, and I'll just explain why we did this. So I did this activity. I actually did this in a presentation, I think it was a few years ago now. And what was interesting is once people do this, it gives you an immediate alert. And I'll explain how this works. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains not only what the modes are, but he explains their outcomes. In other words, each area over time tends to lead to a certain outcome. So for example, the mode of ignorance is said to lead to, let's say, destructive or deteriorating outcomes. So if I just continue to eat food which is unhealthy, if I just continue to ignore, some warning signs that my health isn't good, then let's be honest, where's that going to end up? Could be some kind of serious health challenge. In the year that we've just had and the year we're still having, to be honest, it's a very interesting experience. Some people, because of very good healthy lifestyle habits, their immune system was strong. I know a few people who had coronavirus, but they had very mild symptoms. Sometimes those mild symptoms is because you have the effect of the virus in comparison to the strength of their immune system. So the immune system was very strong. They did get the virus, but because the immune system was very strong, they were not so affected. And then you have other people, and we hear about this in the news all the time. We hear about other people who they have low immunity. So that same situation could be absolutely catastrophic. So think about that. So the mode of ignorance leads to a destructive outcome. The mode of passion, in the beginning seems okay, but in the longer term, it can lead to frustration, right? It can lead to frustration and also emergencies. Then the mode of goodness. The mode of goodness is interesting because when people have some area in the mode of goodness, it tends to be very functional and working well. So it doesn't require so much attention. If you have something in the mode of goodness, you know it's well set up, it will chug along nicely. But particularly if things are in the mode of ignorance, that can be the warning sign. Okay, your finances are in the mode of ignorance. You don't know what's going in, what's going out, if there's anything going in, then what you want to do in those areas is give those areas, if they're important, and we've listed really things which are important. If those areas are in the mode of ignorance, it means you want to give them attention. You want to give it a bit of TLC, right? Tender loving care. You want to give it some awareness, some knowledge, and some activity. Okay. So I don't know how much money I've got. I don't know. So if anything happens, we could really be caught out here. Okay, let me find out what's going on in terms of my finances, right? Let me find out what's going on. Let me find out how much do I spend per week? So how much do I need in order to make sure that we can tide over? And interestingly enough, let me also see what I can put away for the rainy day. I mean, let's be honest, the way life is now, who knows what can happen? So many people are in very unusual situations. And if you'd have told them at the beginning of last year this would happen, people would be like, dude, you need to drink less coffee. You know, it's completely surprised us. So we have to learn to expect the unexpected. Okay, so you can use this to evaluate where you are and to make those adjustments so that you can really excel. So one of the things that you can do along with the exercises we did last week is, as you go into crafting your goals, you may want to consider which areas of life may need more attention because they are in ignorance or passion. Right? Something to think about. We're going to move on. So we're now going to do another activity, which again can help to draw out some of our insights about where we want to go for 2021. For this, I'm going to ask you all to sit up straight. So we're going to do a little bit of a visualization. I'm going to stop my screen so I can see all of you. Just sit in a comfortable space. And I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. Okay. So with your spine erect but relaxed, with your eyes closed, I'm just going to ask you to start to imagine that in front of you, there's a mirror. I want you to imagine that you're looking at your own reflection in the mirror. You're looking at your own reflection in the mirror. You're admiring how handsome and attractive. That was a joke. That was just joking. You're just looking at your reflection in the mirror. So while you're looking at your reflection in the mirror, I want you to just put your hand forward and just touch the mirror. Just touch. And I want you to actually, when you touch the mirror, I want you to feel that sensation. Feel that touch of the mirror. We've all done this before. So imagine that you're touching it. You can feel the coolness of the mirror. You can feel what it's made of, the texture. And I want you to move your hands just across the mirror while you're still looking at your reflection in the mirror. Okay. You're looking at your reflection. You can see your hand. You can see the reflection of your hand as your hand is touching the mirror. You can feel the coolness. You can feel the texture, the temperature with your fingers as you touch the mirror. So you're using your sense of sight. You can see your reflection, but you're also using your sense of touch. Now, I want you to take your hand away from the mirror. And I want you, in your visualization, so stay in your visualization, I want you to grab your mobile phone. Okay? So just bring the mobile phone into your hand. And I want you to look at your mobile phone. So you're still visualizing, but you're looking at your mobile phone. Your mobile phone is in your hand. And I want you to look at the date and the time on your mobile phone. And I want you to notice that when you look at the date and when you look at the time on your mobile phone, the date says December 31st, 2021. I repeat, when you look at the mobile phone, feel the phone in your hand, feel the texture of your phone, the weight of the phone in your hand. Look at the screen. It's your phone. You know what the screen of your particular phone looks like, whether it's an iPhone or Samsung, whatever it is. You're looking at the screen, you can see the date, you can see the time. The date says December 31st, 2021. And when you look at the time says 11:59. So you're almost coming to the end of 2021. And as you're visualizing this, I want you to imagine now a feeling. In your heart, you feel really happy about the year. Okay? So you feel the phone in your hand, you've got the reflection of your body in the mirror. You can feel the phone in your hand, you can feel the texture of the phone, you can see the date and the time, 11:59 p.m., December 31st, 2021. You're looking at the date and time, you're also feeling that you're very happy. The reason you're very happy is because 2021 was a really good year for you. So in your visualization, just take a few moments and tune into that feeling. You're feeling happy. You've been transported to the end of the year. You're feeling really good at the end of the year. You're feeling this has been a very successful 2021. And as you connect with this feeling, I'd like you to allow your mind to show you why it was such a successful year. Okay, imagine you're at the end of the year, it was a great year. Now, allow yourself to realize why you're feeling this way, why it was a successful year, what things you did in particular, what activities you pursued in particular, what things that you started doing, what things that you stopped doing, what things that you may have continued doing in particular that made you feel, wow, that was a great year. Wow, 2021, that was such a good year. Just connect with that visualization. What's coming into your mind as you think of yourself at the end of the year, looking back thinking, wow, that was a really good year. Tune into the things, again, I really emphasize this, tune into the things that you were doing, the things that you pursued, the way you spent your time, your energy that made 2021 such a successful year. Just give yourself some time to really see that. Let it come into your awareness. You're feeling it was a successful year. Tune into why. What are the things that you're thinking about that came up in your visualization that would make you feel, wow, that was a really good year. That was a good 2021. In spite of anything and everything. I'll give you a few more moments to really tune into that. And then, when you're ready, I'm going to ask you all to start to bring your awareness back to our session in real time, back to the Zoom call, back to our exchanges. Okay. So I'm going to ask you to stay in a meditative state though, but bring your awareness back to the call, back to the Zoom, but to maintain any gifts, any insights that you gained from the reflection. Okay. And I'm going to ask you to use your emoticon, just pull a thumbs up, just to say that you're back in the room so we can take it to the next level. Okay. I just want to make sure no one went to sleep during that visualization activity. Okay, so holding on to those benefits. I'm going to ask you now, we'll give you about two minutes. You can do this in bullet point and you can elaborate on this in your own time, but what did you see? Okay, what did you see? You took you to the end of the year. We invoked that sense it was a great year. Now start to write down what came into mind, what made it a great year. Put those down. We're going to give you literally 2 minutes and then we're going to step on. And you may, as you make your notes, you may want to reflect on what we did prior to that, which is the health relationship. So in your visualization, you may have touched upon some of these areas. And it's really that 2021 being a successful year. We transported you through time to the end. And now you're looking back. What did you see that would make you come to December the 31st, 11:59 p.m., 2021, thinking, you know what? Wow, that was a really good year. Okay. Tune into what did you maybe focus on? What did you start doing? What did you stop doing? Was there anything that you continued doing? Really put this down. Okay, so this is all about that powerful insight. And what we've done is a visualization exercise where we work backwards. We work backwards, but we work backwards using all of our internal faculties to consider. And actually what you did in this exercise, you also tuned into your unconscious to really tap into what you deep down would consider to be a successful 2021. Okay. So I've asked you to bullet point some of those things. I can see some people smiling, so I'll take that as a good sign. It means, you know, people got something positive from the exercise. That's my mission achieved. So we're going to take it a step further. I want to show you some really exciting stuff, to be honest with you. We're going to give you some new angles on this whole idea of goal setting. What we've done so far was what we call goal setting in the mode of goodness. What you'll see in the commercial world, when most people talk about goal setting, it's more in the mode of passion. It's not based upon where they are. It's not based upon who they are. It's not based upon what actually needs attention. It's just like, what do you want? You see? But what we're doing here is trying to have a deeper, more profound approach. So it's not just what does someone want, but actually let's look at your life, right? Let's look at where life actually is and what really needs attention using the modes. Let's look at what's going on beneath the level of conscious awareness, right? Let's start to dig a bit deeper into what's going on beneath the surface. And we're going to follow that theme as we move on now. So let's show you my slides again. And we're going to take it a step further. Okay, so we did this inner lab exercise. Now, interestingly enough, when we go from the inner lab, we also want to consider the following. Let's see. Okay, and this is really important. How many of you, I'm going to stop this again because I just want to see all of you. Raise your electronic hand. How many of you have heard of the law of attraction? If you have, yeah, you can put your hand, electronic hand, whatever it is. Fantastic. So I want to give you something else, something related to that. Very simple, but very profound statement. Before the law of attraction, there was the law of the attracted. What do I mean by this? There's a very simple question that sits beneath this statement. And the question is, where do our desires come from? Okay. So oftentimes people want stuff. You know, I want to be, you know, in this job, or I want to hang out in this circle. It's always good to ask ourselves the question also, where do our desires come from? When I was at college, when I was doing my A-levels, one of my A-levels was in media studies. And we looked at, they call it semiotic analysis. So what you do is you look at advertising and you try to break down the advertising to understand, how does this actually work? Why would this appeal to someone? So I always remember this example. We had a teacher, she was a good teacher actually, Miss Kessel, if I remember her name correctly. So she came in one day and she had an advertisement for cigarette smoking, right? So it was a bright orange poster. In the center of the poster was a 3x3 image. So nine boxes, 3x3. In each box, you had part of an image of a cigarette packet. And she said, here you go, look at the poster and explain to me how this advert works. We had no idea. Then she broke it down for us. It was so interesting. And she said to me, she said, Ed, what happens is the following. She said that the smoking or the cigarette companies, they know that their audience are constantly dying. Okay. So she said, let's walk this through step by step. She said, first of all, when you see the grid 3 by 3 and you see parts of an image of a cigarette packet, what does that grid remind you of? It reminds you of something beginning with P. I'm going to ask anyone to just put it in the chat window. A 3 by 3 grid, each has got a small section of a picture of a cigarette packet. What does that remind you of? It looks like a what? Anyone in the chat window? It looks like something. What does it look like? A prison? Okay, it's anything else. A 3 by 3 grid, each has got part of an image of a cigarette packet in that 3 by 3. Exactly, Jitendra. It looks like a puzzle. Now, who's attracted to puzzles? Who particularly likes puzzles? Any ideas? Any guesses? In the chat window again, who particularly is into or could be into puzzles? Absolutely, children. Okay, so she explained this is how it works. She said, the image in the center, it looks like a puzzle. In addition, you look outside of the image in the center, it's bright orange. Bright colors attract children. The puzzle in the center attracts children. So she said that the cigarette advertising companies, they try to create an unconscious connection between their brand and youth, so that when that young person becomes older and life is a bit stressful, they have to take on some responsibilities, when they want to reach out for something to steady them, what's happened unconsciously, and this is why it's so powerful, because you're not aware of it. What happens unconsciously, and let's be real, many people who are adults, when life comes in, you've got family responsibilities, you've got work responsibilities, you've got bills, you've got mortgages. Many people think, you know what, when I was young, we were so carefree. So what they do is they create the unconscious connection between that youthfulness, that carefreeness, that curiosity, that free time, that being taken care of, that all of those youthful positive experiences, they connect it to the brand of that cigarette. So that when people get a bit stressed, some of them, because it's one ingredient amongst other things which are going on in the person's life, but when that stress comes, someone will reach out, or some of those people who saw the advert, who have that subconscious connection, they'll reach out for that brand in order to steady themselves. So this brings us to a really important point. We want you to consider, with any desire that you go for, please ask yourself the question, why? Okay? It's very, very powerful. I was on a call. I have God family. So I have a spiritual mentor who passed away many years ago. I was on a call on the weekend with members of my God family. And one of them, many of them actually, they're trained in what we call needs analysis. So what they're trained to do is, let's say that you have a relationship with someone and they're being a little bit negative, harsh, rude, whatever. What they're trained to do is not to take the behavior at face value. They're trained to look at the behavior and try to understand what is the underlying need that sits beneath the behavior. I had an example of this. I was in America, in Pennsylvania, and I was giving a seminar on leadership. And this was many years ago. And as I was giving the seminar, whatever I said, there was one guy in the seminar, whatever I said, he just kept interrupting me. And I was becoming frustrated. And then I remembered what my spiritual mentor taught about this needs analysis. So I took a moment to try and think, what could be beneath this behavior? What could be behind the behavior? And it became obvious, like, wow, he's looking for attention. So I said because it was a small group of us in this leadership seminar, I turned to the rest of the class and I said, we have a scholar in our class. It's so interesting. He literally smiled. He broke into a smile, right? Like, ding, the teeth just lit up. He broke into a smile. He did not say a word for the rest of the seminar. Can you believe it? And I realized, wow, it's not just what's going on, it's what's going on beneath the surface. So I encourage you, because sometimes we want one thing, but we actually need something else. You sometimes see this with people who are famous. They'll say, I wanted to become adored by millions, right? But sometimes it doesn't work, because those people who adore the person don't really know the person. So what they're really looking for are deep loving exchanges with people who really accept them. You see the point? So there's sometimes what we want, but behind that is what we're really looking for. And that's why sometimes when we get something, we think, I've got it, and I'm not really happy, because we didn't tune into the real underlying need. So I'm just going to encourage you to think about that. I'm going to bring my slides back on. So this point, before the law of attraction was the law of attracted. So it's really about where our desires come from and what our real needs are. Okay, actually, let's go back then. So this is just one framework from the Bhagavad Gita and from Bhakti Yoga. So what you have is the following. We have our physical body, we say the senses. We pick up so many things in the environment. So the advertising, what our friends are doing, what our family are doing, what society says we should do. And because we become stimulated by the environment, we start to desire things. Now, having seen something in the environment, we start to desire it. So the mind says, I want that, okay? Then when people have a weak intelligence, then the mind controls the intelligence. The mind goes to the intelligence. You know what? Did you see that car that this person has? I want one. And the intelligence is forced to work out a plan to get the car. What the Bhagavad Gita talks about is giving you a greater sense of free will. How does that happen? The Bhagavad Gita talks about spiritualizing the intelligence through, like we're doing, these discussions which relate to spiritual wisdom. So when the intelligence becomes more spiritualized, more empowered by wisdom, then when you see something in the environment and the mind thinks, you know, I want that, when the mind comes to the intelligence and says, I want that, the intelligence says, are you sure? Is that really going to be good for us in the long term? I know it looks good in the short term, but are you sure that's going to really work? The intelligence can give us more knowledge. So we can think, yeah, I know impulsively I desired it, but when I think about it, I think, no, actually, it's not really good. You know, it could be anything. It could be, you know, impulsively, I thought I should do this course. But, you know, when I think about it, how much money it's going to cost, how much time, and actually I've got friends who already know that subject who could just tell me about it. So you get more information and more wisdom to make better, more powerful choices. And in the Bhagavad Gita, it's explained that when you use this hierarchy, especially by spiritualizing the intelligence, you can control the mind. And when you control the mind, you can control your entire destiny. So just by regular reading of books on the Vedic teaching, such as the Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the most powerful of them, you can literally improve and increase and strengthen your free will. Okay, I'll leave you with that. Let's move on, because there's a few things to share before our time is up. So the question now becomes, why is it that sometimes people have desires and they don't achieve them? So I thought it would be relevant to bring up this discussion on free will. There's a very interesting piece of research I was doing, and I'll give you the reference because I think it's actually very, very good. And you can look this up in your own time. What I'm sharing with you here, this is from a TED Talk. And the TED Talk is called Self-Worth Theory, the Key to Understanding and Overcoming Procrastination. The reason why I'm sharing this is because some of the points which are made here relate to the teachings of the Gita, especially around the modes. So they get into it, they've done some research on why people procrastinate, because we're talking about goal settings, right? So I want to achieve this. Everyone says that. Literally every year people talk about goal setting, New Year's resolutions, and all of these things happen, but it doesn't quite happen. So the question now is why? So this model is given in that seminar, in that talk, and there's a Vedic angle on this. As I said at the beginning, whenever you meet something which actually works long term, it's always related to something in the Vedas, because literally the Vedas contain all the essential principles of wisdom and how life works. The reason why many people procrastinate and don't achieve their goal, according to the research, is that they have both a high fear of failure and what we call a high success orientation. In the Bhagavad Gita, it's so interesting. In the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, One of the things that Krishna tells Arjuna, he tells him, make your endeavor, do your duty, but do not be attached to the outcomes, right? Don't be concerned by success or failure, praise or criticism, right? Honor and dishonor. He actually says to him, look, do what you're meant to be doing, but do not become overly invested in the outcome. Now, it's so amazing because the study shows that when people have a high fear of failure and over dependence on success, it can lead to a sense of over striving. Now, what does that mean by over striving? Let's get into it a little bit more. So, what happens for most people is they start to equate their sense of self-worth with their achievement. I'm going to pause there and just say, can anyone relate to that, or is it just me? Has that ever happened to any of us in our lives, right? Isn't that interesting? And we all know this intuitively. We all know this intuitively, that we sometimes feel that if I don't do well, I'll feel bad about myself. I won't just feel that I failed at something. I start to feel that I am a failure. In other words, I start to identify with the outcome of what I'm doing. And that is one of the reasons why people become stuck. You see? Because what happens is now I'm so kind of attached to the outcome, I'm scared. And you know, in the talk, it gives a very good example that many of us as students can relate to as well. So sometimes people wait to the last minute to study for their exams. Can anyone relate to that, or is it just my university that had that? Okay, exactly. Now it's explained that one of the reasons for that is because if a person does not do well, they can say, well, I only studied last night. I only put in 2 hours, so that's why. And what's happening is we're trying to protect our sense of self-worth. So we now have a narrative, we now have an excuse for why we didn't do well. And the excuse isn't because I'm not valuable, it's because I didn't try hard enough, or I really wasn't bothered about it, or something happened with my family, etc. Because we're too invested in the outcome. So this is a paradox. Even though we're speaking about goal setting, we're going to encourage you. The paradox is, and the studies have shown this, when you do not become overly dependent on the outcomes, when you disidentify from what you're trying to achieve, the paradox is you achieve more. Isn't that amazing? And you can, we can understand this intuitively. See, we talked about this, I think, last time. We had this question, what would you do if you could not fail? But I would say even better, what would you do if you had nothing to prove? If it didn't matter, if when you succeed, no one's gonna think, if you fail, no one's gonna think less of you. Think about that. In businesses now, they're trying to get their staff to innovate. And what they're trying to do is they talk about fail fast, fail first. And what they're trying to do is create an environment of psychological safety, whereby you can try new things, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. In fact, we're going to praise you just because you tried. And they're seeing that when they do this, people are being more innovative, more successful, trying new things. Why? Because what they're doing is they're separating your self-worth from the outcome, which is an ancient principle which is explained directly by Krishna to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. So we're going to encourage you, as you set goals, to think carefully and try to do things, but without attachment to the outcomes, okay? So in summary, let's look at these points. Goals are important because they help us to get a sense of progress. So more important than the outcome is the journey. Procrastination comes from stress. I've got both a fear of failure, how will people look at me? What will I think about myself if it doesn't work out? And therefore I'm also over dependent on success. If it works out, then I'm somebody. If it doesn't work out, I'm crushed. I mentioned this, and I'm going to pull a quote maybe in a few days on my Instagram. It's interesting. You will find that whenever you see someone who's overly dependent on praise and approval, that same person will be equally overly sensitive to criticism, because they're two sides of the same coin. So what we want to do is develop a deeper sense of inherent self-worth, which really also is a spiritual thing. The fact that I am valuable in success or failure. It doesn't matter if someone's got more money than you, less money, more facility, less facility. It doesn't matter. Your value is not based upon externals. You are unique and valuable in all times, all places, and all circumstances. Just think how powerful you would be if we lived on a day-to-day basis like that. Just think how powerful that would be, and how much that would send a message. Just your presence would send such a powerful message to other people. So when our fear of not doing something exceeds the desire to do it perfectly, then it becomes that last minute activity, but the quality isn't necessarily there. And as we said before, we try to protect our sense of self-worth. And if we felt, yeah, I didn't do well, it's because, you know, I just studied last night. I didn't do anything all year. I was just partying and so on. So I want to leave you with that thought as we move forward. Okay, so the inner game, and that we'll use this as a summary, and this is from Krishna: one who is situated equally well in praise and blame is said to have transcended. This is from the Bhagavad Gita. The idea that we make the endeavor and we don't evaluate our self-worth based upon the outcome. Okay, let's move on. We have a few more things to discuss, and then we will have time for Q&A. So this is another point that I really was excited to share with you. So this is called systems theory. And this is very simple. The idea that you have a goal, great. But what most people do in normal goal setting is they just try to make the goal a success. We're taking it to another level. What we're suggesting to you is, I know you want to achieve something, but rather than just thinking about the goal, think about the environment that will set you up and lean you in towards the goal that you want to achieve. So for those of you in the Bhakti tradition, you know this example. So sometimes in the temple environment, we may want to do some mantra meditation. Now, it's not always easy to meditate. We all know the mind can wander. We may end up looking at our mobile phone, for example. We may end up thinking about something different. So in the Bhakti tradition, there's a time in the day, a time in the morning called Mangalati, where people can come into the environment where many people are meditating together. And because everyone is engaged in the same activity with the same focus, literally the environment is pushing us towards the goal that we want to achieve. In other words, you have two things. You have your effort and you have the environment. If you want to achieve your goals effectively, this is a great, game changer. Most people just think about the goal. In other words, most people just think about the endeavor and the effort. What we're saying to you here is, great, yes, think about the endeavor, think about the effort, but also think about the environment. What's the environment that's going to set you up for success in achieving the goal? So we know this intuitively. Okay, I want to study for my exams. Where am I going to be able to study best? When I'm in the common room where all my friends are hanging out, or if I'm in an environment where everything in the environment sets me up to focus? Where am I likely to do more work, have more focus, and achieve my outcome? This is really important, and they use this. This is called systems theory, and they use this in the secular world because of the following 5 reasons. It allows you to do something more than just rely on your willpower, because now you have the environment. Point number 3, the environment is helping to push you in the direction that you want to go into. Okay, it's recognizing that the way that we move forward in life has a lot to do with the environment, and that can be the people you spend time with, the kind of environments that you work in. All of these things help to nudge you in a certain direction. They help to, as we say, number 4, they help to drive the behavior So therefore, the conclusion is that when you set a goal, you should also set up the environment that helps you to achieve the goal. Okay? That way, you have your willpower and you have the environment both working for you to move you in the direction you want to achieve. Quick example. Okay, so you want to eat more healthily. So what do? You make fruit more easily accessible in your environment, and you make the unhealthy options harder to access, right? Very, very simple example. You want to study better. Okay, you don't hang out with your friends who like to chit chat all the time. You hang out with the people who really are really focused in their studying, because by that association and environment, you lean in to the behaviors that you want to achieve. And if you do this regularly, then first of all, you have the right environment. In the later stages, the environment comes into you. And when the environment enters you, we call that habits. In other words, your habits are the autopilots of your success. And your environment really has a major role to play in shaping your habits. What happens for most people is their effort is actually conflicting with the environment. The environment is saying, just watch Netflix, just hang out with your friends. And then they have to do more to counteract the effect of the environment to achieve their goal. So we're asking you to, for every goal that you set, also think about the environment. What environment do I need to put myself into to achieve that goal? So for example, many people, they're healthier. Why? They just go to the gym. Just go to the gym. That one thing, you're now in the environment. Everyone else is working out. So you're going to do a certain amount yourself because you've put yourself in an environment that leans you in towards your goal. Okay, so think about that carefully. Let's move on. A few more things and we'll have some time for Q&A. Okay, so very simple point, and many of you have heard of this before. When you set goals, try to make them, how you write them is important. First of all, specific. Exactly what are you trying to achieve? Make them motivating. I would add to this, write down the why. When you put the goal down, also write down why you want to achieve it. So you can remind yourself, why am I doing this again? Make them attainable so that they're realistic. Make them relevant and rewarding. So what will I get from achieving this? So you put down the goal, but you also put down the benefit of achieving that goal. So you know the motivation and you know the outcome, the positive reward. Because when you feel like giving up, you can run, hold on, if I do this, I can get this amazing outcome. And the last one here is make it trackable. That means there should be some way that you can see that you're making progress. When you're going to have a goal, what's the time frame? Is this something I'm going to be doing within a week's time, 2 weeks, a month? Trackable, because that way you can review on a regular basis and you can see, am I coming closer to my goal or am I going further from my goal? Okay. And I guess we'll leave this on the screen while we go to questions. This is my last kind of summary. Your master plan should be the following. Have a few key goals. Don't try and do anything and everything. Try to think what's most important. We talked about making them smart. We also talked about writing down the why, the motivation. Why am I doing this? Because what that does, most people's goals are on the level of the mind. When you understand and have a good reason why you're doing something, it also activates the intelligence. Linked to that, have a future vision. So if I do this, what's the positive outcome? 2 more things. Support system, okay? Support system means the environment that helps you to achieve your goal, but it also means people. Who can you check in with regularly? Maybe you can pair up with a friend. Okay, I'll show you my goals, you show me yours. We'll check in once a month to see how we're doing. In other words, last point, make yourself accountable to someone. There's a study which is found, it's a study in neuroscience, that when you vocalize your goals to another person, you immediately increase the likelihood that you will achieve your goal. Because now you have someone else who you know, they're watching you. They remember, you said you were going to do this. How's it going? Right? And you don't have that conversation too many times where you have to keep admitting, you know what, I haven't done anything. It feels embarrassing after a while. So you think, no, They know I said I'm gonna do this, so now I'm accountable, and the accountability helps you to move forward. Okay, so let's stop here and let's open up for Q&A. Any questions, comments from anything that you've heard so far? And I'm going to ask to direct them to the MC. So I forgot about that, and then they can ask me. And you may have some questions already, Sharadia.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Yes, indeed. We have some questions already. So one interesting question is, how can one push themselves to give their best without being attached to a result? Because the result may be the thing that is motivating you and driving you to achieve that goal.
Fantastic. So first of all, it's a journey, right? So this idea of not being too overly attached to the results, there's two things you can do for this. First, to recognize it's a journey. It's not something that just switches overnight, because we've been used to doing things like that. Yes, you know, if I get this done, people think I'm wonderful, they'll think I'm great. But remember what we said earlier. As much as the success can be elating, the failure can be crushing. You become really powerful the day that your self-worth is not dependent on outcomes. And trust me, it makes you actually become more determined. You're able to do more. You're able to go for more. You're able to take more calculated risks. And if it doesn't work out, hey, we tried our best. Air 5. Seriously, it's like that. You want to get to that state. So remember, it's a journey. It won't happen overnight. Some things can help though. For example, reminding ourselves that I am valuable in all times, places, and circumstances independently of the outcome. If you just remind yourself that, that can give you some detachment. You see, many people, they go for certain things in life because in the back of their mind, they feel inferior. And they think that when I achieve something, I will be, you know, that's why I think I mentioned this previously. People say, I want to be somebody, but they don't really understand the subtext. They don't understand what that reveals about their mentality. If you say that you want to be somebody, you've just admitted that you actually believe that you're inferior now, and that when you achieve something, then you'll become more valuable. Now, I don't know about you, but is that what you really want to tell yourself? That's not what I want to tell myself. I'm inferior. And that's why also people look up to people who've achieved certain things, because they actually feel this person is better than me. Is that the way you want to feel about yourself? That someone whoever's got more of something, because there's different dimensions, by the way. And that's why there's a lot of social anxiety now, because you go online, you go onto social media, someone seems to have more friends than you do. Do you really want to believe that you're inferior to that person? Someone seems to have a better relationship than you do, or they've got better outcomes in terms of exams. Do you really want to believe that they're inherently better than you are? I don't know about you, but I'm not living that way. I know people who live that way. I'm like, you may want, if you want to go in that direction, listen, it's your life. I'm not living that way. I actually refuse to do that. You see, there's a different way of living. So if we remind ourselves that, and you can also, two other things. So let's say 3 in total. 1, remind ourselves that we are inherently valuable. In the Gita, it's explained that we're inherently valuable because we are amsa, we're part and parcel of the Supreme. Right? In the Gita, it says that you're the soul. So you're inherently valuable. Success, failure, that's not the issue. So 1 is to remember that we're inherently valuable. 2 is to also value the journey. So I can focus away from the result by focusing on the journey, focusing on how I'm improving, focusing on how every day I'm taking a step closer to improvement. And the third thing that we can do is think of the outcomes in terms of how it will contribute not only to ourselves, but to others' lives. In other words, one of the ways to become detached from the outcome is to think of outcomes as something that you contribute to the life of other people. It brings in the principle of service. It's just like, I'll give you an example. Some friends are coming to your house and you want them to have a good meal. So you're not so attached to the meal for yourself because you're cooking for someone else, right? You may have even eaten. So you're not going to even eat the food. You're not hungry, but you know that your friends who are coming around, they like it. You're full, but you're cooking for them. That gives you it gives you two things. One, a sense of care because you're cooking for someone you like. And at the same time, you're detached because it's not about your enjoyment, it's about their enjoyment. So it's something that we practice, especially for those in the Bhakti tradition. Just by practicing the mantra meditation, you become more attached to serving, to doing something to give higher pleasure than to just trying to get some stimulation for yourself. And the paradox is when you take that orientation, you become more fulfilled at the same time, which is a real paradox. Okay, thank you for that question.
Thank you, Prabhu, for that answer. So just to quickly try and summarize the answer, it seems that to begin with, we need to work on healthy self-esteem in order to actually set good goals. And then when we are setting goals, we should also assess ourselves and ask ourselves, what need are you trying to address, through pursuing this goal? And then in our pursuit of goals, we need to practice, because it takes time, to meditate upon the fact that we should be pursuing this goal, and that activity, we should offer it for a greater good, because that detachment frees us from the experience of, I suppose, failure. Because if we can...
Yeah, please, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, not at all. I'm trying to just recollect everything that you said. So it's very interesting, because we see that when we have that detachment, it actually protects us.
Absolutely, it allows you to be even more fearless, more determined. See, think about it. We know this intuitively. If you're going for something and it doesn't matter whether you succeed or fail, in other words, it matters in one sense because you want to achieve something, but you're not dependent on it. That's the key word. Mm. If it doesn't go well, you're not crushed, because your identity and your value is not based on the outcome. And look, we know this. When we were at university, I remember there was always some annoying person who really did not work hard all year, but they were so sharp. They just crammed everything overnight and they still did well. And yet someone else who was working their socks off, but they did not necessarily do so well. So we know that actually even the outcomes you achieve is not really a result of the effort anyway. What we're saying here is do your best, right? You can do your best when you're not attached. It's the same principle which allows us to help our friends. You've all seen this, right? Someone's going through a relationship issue. It's not they're a friend of yours. You can see exactly what's happening. You can give him or her good advice. You can tell them, dude, why are you still in that relationship? It's not going to work out. I told you from the beginning, this girl or this guy, they're not the right person for you. You can see your friend's issue and you can solve it easily because it's not your issue. You're detached. Because you're detached, you can look at it objectively. You can see exactly what's going on. You can see exactly what they need to do. You can see exactly what the issues are. It's so easy because you're not involved emotionally. Anyone had that experience before by any chance? Anyone? Exactly, right? But when it's our own issue, whoo, then it's a whole other story, right? Then it's Titanic all over again. It's like, it's a whole thing, right? It's Mills and Boons. It's like, Romeo and Juliet, you name it, because we're too invested. This brings up another point, by the way. If you want to, you can get your friends to look over your goals. So I'm thinking about doing this. Do you think it's realistic? You can get another pair of eyes, right? So you want to become a world-class gold medalist in the Olympics, and you've never set foot onto a track before. Dude, I think we need to look at that again, right? Let's look at that again, dude, right? Take two. Whatever it is, you understand where I'm coming from. So, but one other thing I should add, just the practice of mantra meditation in the Bhakti tradition and the regular reflection on the Bhagavad Gita as it is, because it's spiritual knowledge, they also have an effect of giving you that perspective and that detachment as well over time. Again, it does take time. Yeah.
So probably a follow-up question about dealing with failure. Someone wants to know that if we experience failure, maybe we don't have that level, of detachment yet. So that, we can't just accept that, things are not turning out the way we wanted it. So when we experience failure, should we have a backup plan, or should we just, go with whatever is happening?
See, it depends on what you're particularly striving for. In some situations, let's say you're a parent, and for some reason, your car broke down when you were on your way to pick up your child from school. Definitely, you need a backup plan for that, right? Because it's not just a question of not achieving it. There's someone who's dependent on you, and you have responsibility to them. So it depends on what your goal is. So in some cases, definitely a backup plan is good. Sometimes, and this is a whole other topic, but sometimes we fail because we haven't planned properly. I would say the first question when something doesn't work out is, why didn't it work out? Is it because it was unrealistic? Is it because I did not put the proper effort in? Is it because I didn't have the right expertise? So I think in order to answer that question, you have to really look at what's behind it, okay? And then that will be part of the backup plan sometimes. Sometimes it may just be, you know what, you don't need to, you were striving for the wrong thing in the first place. I often find it useful in life, and I do this a lot. When something fails, I have my view on why it didn't work out, but I'll also get perspectives from other people. Because sometimes they'll be like, dude, I didn't even think you should have been wasting your time going for that in the first place. It was just a complete waste of time. Or sometimes it's like, you know what? I actually don't think that was a good thing for you to go for. I think you were going for that because the people that you were around, they're into that. And by association, you thought, well, they're into this, I should get into this as well. But it's for them, but it's not something for you. Okay, so you have to see why.
Thank you, Prabhu. Two things which I'm hearing continuously is the importance of reflection. Like even when you fail, start by reflecting and asking, why did you fail? Was I pursuing something, meaningless in the first place? Or was this not really aligned with my nature? Or, didn't I plan properly? And then the other thing that's coming up again and again is the power of association. In asking your friends to help you evaluate your goals, asking your friends to help you assess your failure. And I think that is something that not necessarily tap in enough. And we could, it's like we've got more human resources that we could use. Now, another question, which is related, was someone was asking, they feel that at this point in their life, they have goals and they are motivated, but all of their motivation is very much extrinsic. Like they are studying hard to get a good job and they want a good job to get the money. But they are experiencing that is depriving them actually, for instance, from just experiencing the joy of learning in itself. So they're really lacking in intrinsic motivation. So they're asking, how can we shift from being extrinsically motivated to being intrinsically motivated?
Okay, there's a few things, and maybe I'll give two things that they can think about. One is to simply ask yourself the question, what do I appreciate about the journey? Because what you're saying is this person's focusing on the outcome, but they can start to ask, what do I appreciate about the journey? So it can be as simple as a shift in focus. I like studying, fantastic. I like feeling that I've got my day planned nicely, fantastic. I like the fact that I can share this knowledge with other people, fantastic. Even in terms of the outcome, that's not necessarily bad. What they can add to the outcome is how this will help me and others. So what we said before about the outcome as service, contribution. So yes, let's say that you got this money and so on, but how would that allow you to help you make your own life and the world a better place? So you can take it through to that next level, which can also free them from just being, I just need to get this, I just need to get that. But again, let's be very real. If we've had a mentality where it's all about being attached to outcomes, to suddenly shift overnight, it doesn't work that way. It is something that we evolve into, but this can be the start of the journey for some of us. It can be a step further to that journey for some of us. And I'll be honest with you, let's be very real. One of the things that we learn in Bhakti Yoga is that life will help us. We each have lessons to learn. We each have ways that we need to grow. So if we adopt the right mentality, things actually go better for us. If we refuse to do so, then sometimes we open ourselves up to certain lessons that we may not have had to learn otherwise. So we should just try the best that we can and see how things unfold.
Thank you, Prabhu. I think that was a very powerful answer, just reminding us of the importance of meditating on what we actually appreciate about the process and the experience that we are going through. Now, connected to that is someone is asking that you mentioned that we shouldn't be attached to the results, and that's actually very empowering, developing more detachment. But then they're asking, should we be then attached to the journey or the process? Or should we also be detached from the journey and the process as well?
So there's a very interesting thing I was reading recently, and it was saying that the moment that your self-value is dependent upon something outside of your control, you experience fear and insecurity, right? Think about it. I remember many years ago, in my teenage years, I read about, it was a Miss World contestant. I mean, this girl, she was so attractive, beautiful. As she was growing up, she would get loads of attention because of her looks. She had an accident. In the accident, she became disfigured. And literally her whole life, it just completely crushed overnight. Because what happened was, and it was so interesting, what I remember reading, so her husband, she started to sense that he was with her, but just out of pity. So he didn't find her attractive, but they're married and etc. etc. So now she doesn't look so good, but he was with her, and it was just so debilitating, right? Because she'd gone from being this person who always got attention to being this person who was just getting pity. And so it reminded me about the fragility, because even before the incident, there would be the understanding. And you see this sometimes also, not just with Miss World contestants, but there's also the aging process. Some people do not age well. You know what I'm talking about? I think you guys know what I'm talking about, right? Because as the body grows old, which it does for all of us, they start to struggle with that, because they're kind of trying to hold on to youth, but kind of like in a negative way. So you kind of like see sometimes it's like the person's like 75, 76, but they're dressing like a teenager, and you're thinking that's not looking good. You know what I'm talking about? So it's kind of, they haven't gracefully moved on. You know what I'm talking about? So anyway, it's this idea that we want to be, you can appreciate the process. Let's say it like that. You're able to appreciate the process, but we really want to have a higher taste. That's the real bottom line. When we live life with higher ideals and higher fulfillment, then everything else falls into place. That is the real conclusion of the Bhakti Yoga tradition. And Krishna speaks about this to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, but again, it's a journey. Let's be real about this. It's not something that you just flip a switch and it happens overnight. But what we're trying to do here is at least give you these nuggets of wisdom. Because when you have these seeds of wisdom, over time, you'll see this. If what I'm telling you is true, as you go out into the world, you'll be like, yeah, I see what's going on. Yeah, I see why he's overly concerned about I can see he's too attached, right? Or I see that this person didn't do well in the exam and they're crushed. I get it. Because they identify with the outcome. So when it doesn't work out, they may have studied well, but just, you study all year and they choose certain topics in the exam. And sometimes it's just bad luck that the exam topics are not the ones that you really studied for, but you did your best, right? And that's my journey for the last 25 years. When I got exposed to this knowledge, when I looked out into the world, I could see it worked, because I could start to decode what was going on. So, I get it now. Now I understand why that relationship didn't work, because they were acting in this way. And the Bhakti Yoga tradition says, if you act in that way, it leads to this negative outcome. You can literally decode. It's incredible.
Thank you, Prabhu. It seems that it does come back again to, to the modes, because it seems that if we have no goals, we'd be in the mode of ignorance. But then if we're in the mode of passion, we'll have goals, but we're going to be very much attached to the outcome and identify, with our external performance. But then the mode of goodness is having the goals, having direction for our life, but at the same time being detached and finding our self-worth, inside in our spiritual identity.
And if I just add to that, but we have to start. I just want to emphasize, we're very real. We should be very real. We start where we are. If we're not there yet, that's okay. No one's expecting us to be, ideal or anything like that. It's just that we start where we are. So we start on the platform that we are on, but we know the direction we want to move in. And that's really powerful, right? So we accept ourselves where we are. I did a podcast called the Self-Esteem Spectrum. And part of having healthy self-esteem is that we accept ourselves where we are on our journey, because what that does is psychologically, you're standing on firm ground. And because you're standing on firm ground, you can take the next step and you can take it firmly, you see? And then you take the next step firmly because I know where I am. I'm not in denial. The mode of goodness is characterized by knowledge. So therefore, people who accept and acknowledge where they are, they don't just stay there, right? That's not like, oh, I am who I am and the rest of the world has to accept it. No, you're in a bad place. Okay. But we know this is the first step, right? I was joking about bad place. I just mean that we accept where we are as a starting point. And we know that there's a higher stage. We can be more evolved in our consciousness, more evolved as a person, more evolved in our wisdom. So I know where I am, I accept where I am, but I don't give up improvement. Okay, and I'm excited. I know where I am, I accept where I am, I acknowledge where I am, and I'm excited every day to try and just do one small thing to improve.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. The questions are just flowing in. I think a lot of people feel that there's many more insights you could offer us, but I'm conscious that we have already gone over time. So I would just like to ask you one last question. I'm going to try and combine two questions that we have. So you emphasize the importance of spiritualizing our intelligence so that we can evaluate our goals and make sure our goals are aligned with who we actually are and are going to serve, our best interests. So what can we do to spiritualize our intelligence, and how can we ensure that the goals that we are striving for are actually inherently good?
Okay, so let's combine that. First of all, in terms of spiritualizing the intelligence, it essentially, through having conversations about Bhakti Yoga wisdom, for example, also reading the books of Bhakti Yoga wisdom, for example, Bhagavad Gita, if you do that regularly and reflect on it, I'm telling you from experience, I don't want to give you a theory, because what I'm sharing with you is what's going to happen to me. So the better I share with you, the more I can become blessed and empowered in my own life. If you do it regularly, especially with a view to trying to reflect on it. So you read, but you also reflect. What reflection does is reflection takes the knowledge that you take in from the subconscious level, and it deepens the effect of the knowledge. It starts to go more into your unconscious. The unconscious is where real transformation takes place. The unconscious is empowered by two things: reflection and regularity. So if you just read something once and then that's it, it doesn't transform you. But if you do it as a regular thing and you reflect on it regularly, and reflection can be through discussion, through hearing, taking notes. How does this apply? Oh yeah, I read that in the Bhagavad Gita. Oh, so is this the mode of goodness or the mode of, that's interesting. That kind of thing on a regular basis, you start to see real benefit. And it will actually change you as a person. It's incredible. It really is incredible. So if you do that, that's one of the easiest ways to do that. And then the second part, how do we make sure that our goals are proper? I would say you can consider, if I were to do this, what will be the outcome for me and for other people? That's one way, right? In other words, so I remember hearing this from my own spiritual mentor. If you have a goal whereby if you and other people, if everyone in society did what you were going for, if the outcome would be destructive, then you probably need to rethink that particular goal, okay? So just try to think about goals which are more in goodness, that have a dimension for your own growth and development, but ideally also have some positive impact on the wider society as well. Okay, just something to think about. And you can also check your goals with other people, as we said earlier, to get a different perspective. Do you think these are healthy goals for me? you know, do you think this is actually dealing with some things that I really need to deal with, or do you think I'm wasting my time here? You'd be amazed what you can pick up when you do that.